Hello, my name is Hadia and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to be talking about what it means to be coconut pilled versus red pilled. And normally this is not how I would do a video, okay? I would try to make it all nice and professional, but I'm on my period and I'm really angry and irritable, so this is going to be the vibe. So let's just get into it.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
I'm not just going to be talking about coconut pilling and red pilling. I'm also going to be talking about every single thing that the Kamala Harris campaign did correctly and what Democrats are now doing wrong, because there are so many things. Okay, let's get into it. If you clicked on this video, you probably know what being coconut pilled means. But if you don't know what it means, coconut pilled means that you really like Kamala Harris, okay? And I first heard the term when Emma Vigeland, who was previously on the Young Turks but is now on the Majority Report, tweeted that she was coconut pilled. And she had all these coconut emojis. And I said, what the heck does this mean? Why are we so coconut pilled? Well, the entire context of this joke, right, is that basically Joe Biden did really bad in his first debate against Donald Trump when he was rerunning for president in 2024.
Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
And everyone was like, OMG, like, does he have the cognitive capacity to be president who's running the country right now? Why is he acting like this? Why is he stupid? Now, people like me on the left could have been like, hey girl, did you know that he's been like this for a really long time? But unfortunately, liberals are liberals and they trust the establishment, so they were like, no, Joe Biden is fine. But after this debate, there were so many reports that he had Parkinson's disease and that he was actually hiding it from the public. And so everyone was like, OMG, there are 2 months until the Democratic convention. Who the heck is going to take his place? Should we have a primary? Should we have a debate at the convention? What should we do? But of course, in classic Democratic fashion, they didn't really want to challenge the establishment, so they said, no, we are going to pick someone. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because whenever Biden announced that he stepped down, he did not say who his predecessor was going to be. He just said, I am officially stepping down. I am not running for re-election. And I remember this moment because I said, OMG, Joe Biden just dropped out, and I ran downstairs to tell my grandparents because I was living with my grandparents at the time. And then I believe maybe like 11 minutes later, I could be incorrect, maybe it was 1 minute later, Kamala Harris came out with a statement announcing that she was going to be running for president of the United States. And before any of this even happened, right, during the speculation of Biden dropping out, people said it should be Kamala Harris, and they all said that they were coconut pilled. But why? Why the coconut? Well, it comes after this meme.
Everything is in context. My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
This is actually really funny, and it's even funnier when you find out that Republicans published this video on Twitter trying to make Kamala Harris look really bad. They tried to make her look ridiculous, they tried to make her look unserious, and yeah, the video is ridiculous and unserious, but guess who else is ridiculous and unserious? Every single person on the internet. So the girls and the gays loved it, and I don't know what it was, okay? And I think it's just like Gen Z absurdism and like Gen Z online internet like humor that like did all of this. But this was at the same time that Charli XCX came out with her album Brat, and because the album was so successful and so good and so many people liked it, they called summer Brat Summer. And then you had this coconut meme with Brat Summer, and it came together, made a baby, and that's how we got coconut pill culture. There were videos of Kamala Harris saying the most ridiculous things, people remixing her laugh with some of our favorite songs, especially some of Charli XCX's songs. And here is my favorite freaking edit of all time. It is the funniest thing. This is the peak of humor.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context. Talking about the significance of the passage of time. Right? The significance of the passage of time. Kosher salt, fresh ground pepper, maybe chop up a little thyme. You could also chop up, but not with the thyme, just the salt and pepper. Mix that up also with some thyme. You could even do a little rosemary if you want. The context of all in which you live and what came before you. Based with butter. Yes, hi.
Again, it combines Gen Z absurdism with online internet meme culture like core. what even is core? On top of that, Kamala's campaign was so incredibly hopeful. For her VP, she announced she had a couple of different people to select from, including Governor Shapiro from Pennsylvania, who is a Zionist, but then there was also Tim Walz, who is this progressive governor from Minnesota who gives children free lunch and actually did a bunch of really cool stuff, which I will put right here that you can read about and see. So it was actually really exciting because people on the left were like, oh my gosh, is she actually considering a progressive? Because if she is, she might actually win this election. All of the meme internet hype in conjunction with all of this Tim Walz progressive rhetoric stuff, and also Kamala's slogan, "We're not going back," which is the perfect antithesis to "Make America Great Again," created a really hopeful and fun and joyous and optimistic campaign. Now, let's compare Kamala Harris's hyperpop girly campaign with Donald Trump's red pill campaign. Okay, you probably know what red pill culture is, but if you don't know, it's named after The Matrix, which is a movie that only men like, where basically you can take a red pill or a blue pill, and I believe the red pill is the truth. And that truth is that every single patriarchal norm that exists within society actually only benefits women, because that's what patriarchy means. And you saw this red pill rhetoric with J.D. Vance in particular, especially when it came to the childless cat lady quotes. He said that Democrats were just a bunch of childless cat ladies. Who says that? People in the red pill community, incels, men who can't get laid. They say women who don't like me are just gonna end up alone with their cats, because that's the worst thing in the world, to be with yourself and a beautiful little cat. Do you see these spilled Harry Potter books to the side? That was done by my cat. I am a childless cat lady. Yes, I am. On top of that, you had the Trump campaign associating itself with different red pill content creators, like Trump going on a Twitch stream with Aiden Ross and doing some of the most ridiculous stuff. Okay, that was really out of pocket. I didn't expect it, but he slayed for that because he knew his audience. Then you also had them going on to the Lex Fridman podcast, and Lex Fridman often entertains red pill ideologies. You also had Trump and Vance, both of them, this is two, had 3-hour interviews with Joe Rogan, okay, where Joe Rogan just sits there and lets them talk about whatever the heck they want to talk about. Zero pushback, zero actual journalism, zero real questions. He just let them yap for 3 hours because you know how much men who are wrong love to yap. On top of that, you have this entire narrative that women are abusing abortions and that it's actually good that we got rid of Roe versus Wade, and the promise to keep it overturned. And again, make America great again. Again. A Reagan-era phrase. A phrase that says, let's go back to an old America, let's go back to a white America, where white men are at the top of society and there's no room for anyone else because nobody else is actually considered a person. Juxtapose this with Kamala Harris's, we're not going back. We're not going back, okay? We are the future. Let's look ahead. Very similar to Obama's hope. These two campaigns cannot be any different. On top of that, the Trump campaign, everyone there is super awkward and super weird. There's this video of J.D. Vance ordering donuts, and he just doesn't know how to talk to the person behind the register. And I just want to focus in on J.D. Vance for like 2 seconds, because for one, just the way that he looks, absolutely insane. I thought politicians were supposed to be attractive. This is what we learned in middle school and high school about JFK versus Richard Nixon and the TV, right? They said that people who listened to Richard Nixon debating JFK thought Nixon was a better candidate, but people who watched it on TV thought JFK was a better candidate because he was just really, really attractive. But J.D. Vance is awkward and ugly and weird, and he also wrote this book called Hillbilly Elegy, where he talks about his life. Someone on Twitter said that in Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance confessed to sleeping with his couch. Okay, and then that became an entire meme about J.D. Vance being attracted to couches, and then Tim Walz made a joke about it on stage once, and it was hilarious, okay? There was so much hype around the Harris campaign, and she's actually up by 6 points in the polls at this point. And this seemed like it would be good for Democrats. Kamala Harris had her finger on the pulse. She was going to win the election. However, everything changed when she had Biden staffers on her team, and they told her that "we're not going back" wasn't forward thinking enough, and told her to stop calling Republicans weird. That was another thing. Tim Walz was consistently calling Republicans weird. He was like, they're weird that they think we don't deserve healthcare. They're weird for thinking children don't deserve to eat. But Biden staffers said, no, we cannot do this. And Kamala's rhetoric immediately shifted. Instead of being this progressive populist campaign where she was actually talking about making Americans' lives better economically, she completely shifted her rhetoric, and this was particularly noticeable during the DNC. And I think the biggest thing that really turned people off was saying how she wanted America to have the most lethal military in the world. She also, I believe, went on The View, and when they asked her what she would do different from a Biden presidency, she said that she wasn't going to be doing anything different. And so if you're coming up here, you're not offering anything other than American imperialism and then lecturing everyone about democracy, because that's another thing she did. All she did was talk about how this election is the election of democracy. You're not going to win anyone over. You're not going to be interesting. And people are saying the reason why she had to do this was because she's a black woman, which codes as like really like progressive and like leftist and like liberal. And so she had to make her rhetoric more conservative. But I fundamentally disagree. And again, you could see that in the polls in the beginning. And then also here's this chart that shows you the difference in her rhetoric over the few months of her campaign. She originally started out talking a lot about like populist stuff, and then she slowly decreased the amount she was talking about it, and then increased the amount that she was talking about like democracy and just like other stuff that I actually don't think Americans care about. I don't. And also, if this election was really about democracy and saving it, Democrats clearly don't care about democracy, because the second that Trump won, they were like, okay, cool, let's be more conservative now. And this is where I'm gonna get into the entire conversation about what Democrats are doing wrong now. For one, after the election, Kamala went to Hawaii on a vacation with her family after Trump, this alleged Nazi fascist, got into office. Where is the resistance? Where? I don't really see it. And then Trump was with Joe Biden in the Oval Office, which is this, little thingy that they always do when like the new president gets elected. He seemed fine. He didn't seem angry at all. You can compare this to Obama and Trump. Obama seemed really pissed off that Trump was there, but Biden didn't really care. He doesn't gaff like that. And I want you to sit and think for a minute. When was the last time you've heard from Kamala Harris? When was the last time you've heard from Kamala Harris? Right? She was supposed to be the leader of the Democrats, the leader of the resistance, this fighter against fascism. Now where is she? I haven't heard a single peep from her, actually. I also haven't heard from Joe Biden. None of them have said anything terrible about Trump since he's gotten into office, and he's literally destroying the country. And what's so fascinating is after Trump won, right, back in November, before Trump even got inaugurated, all this stuff, you had Democratic commentators going on to places like CNN and MSNBC saying that Kamala Harris lost the election because she wasn't as conservative as Donald Trump, which is actually so insane to me, because an election, right, an American election is a difference between two people. Do you just want two people who are like the same? And if you really think about it, if you look at Kamala's rhetoric towards the end of her campaign, she did spew like a lot more like conservatism. Like, for one, she didn't say that she wanted to ban fracking. She also didn't really talk about healthcare or having like a public option for healthcare, even though Medicare for all is like super important to millions of Americans. It's like there's like an overwhelming support for Medicare for all. She didn't talk about student loans and eliminating student loan debt, which is something that Biden actually worked on. She didn't talk about really ending the war in Gaza, and talked about Israel's unequivocal right to defend itself. And lastly, she and Trump basically had the same immigration policy. I don't know if you remember the video of her saying, "Do not come," to migrants coming to America.
Do not come. Do not come.
Her entire thing towards the end of her campaign was, "I'm actually just as conservative as you, Trump, I'm just not a Nazi fascist, but I can excuse some aspects of your fascism." Okay, editing me here, I completely forgot to talk about Country Over Party, aka Country Over Party, which was Kamala Harris's attempt at bipartisanship, where she tried to capitulate to the right and win over more conservative voters by campaigning with Liz Cheney, who is Dick Cheney's daughter. And if you don't know who Dick Cheney is, he's literally the reason why we went to war with Iraq. This, in my opinion, is what really put the nail on the coffin for her campaign, because she began to lose a lot of votes on the left. So you had all these commentators saying Kamala should have been more conservative, harder on immigration, and also harder on the trans community. They said she needed to stop playing identity politics, and that we should also just agree with Republicans on hating on trans people, which I personally think is so absolutely ridiculous. The Democratic Party is the party, allegedly the party of all people. And that's how you know that all these commentators are out of touch. All of these like former Biden staffers who were like, oh, well, if Biden had run, he would have won. They are very out of touch. And then you have actual Democrats who are incredibly out of touch. And let's get into the ways in which Democrats are literally failing us Americans right now. So, the DNC needed a new DNC chair, and the last DNC chair was really supportive of Joe Biden. He was like, oh, I think Joe Biden would have won if he ran for president, which we obviously know probably wouldn't have happened. In fact, there was this like internal polling where Biden staffers knew that Biden was going to lose by like this huge margin of the electoral vote. I'll have to see if I can find a picture of it. But Bernie Sanders' old campaign manager said that he wanted to run for DNC chair. Instead, we got this guy who is just this neoliberal who, even after all this like oligarchical stuff is happening with Trump, which I will get into in a bit, said that billionaires are not bad. Actually, Democrats are getting money from good billionaires, and we need to keep our relationships with good billionaires. And this is where the problem lies. It is money. Right? Moneyed interest that is ruining this country, that is ruining democracy. The only reason why Trump was able to get elected is because he had the richest man in the world donating to his campaign. In fact, if you even look at Trump's inauguration, you had Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, some of the wealthiest people in the entire world, front row, in front of his own cabinet at his inauguration. And this is the perfect representation of everything that Trump stands for. And I feel like people forget this, right? Because even if we look back to 2016, one of the first things he did in office was give tax cuts to corporations. Like, Trump literally does not gaffe about you. And of course, he is doing the same exact thing right now. In fact, today, he was selling Teslas outside of the White House. I don't know how that's, like, not freaking illegal. But what we're seeing is all of these people with a lot of money having a lot of power and controlling what's happening to us regular people in this country. Elon Musk, who is not even American, is controlling American politics and literally destroying the economy and literally ruining our life. But rather than standing up for us Americans, what are Democrats doing? I haven't heard from Kamala Harris, I haven't heard from Joe Biden, I haven't heard from Nancy Pelosi. You know, the only person who's doing anything? It's Bernie Sanders. And what is Bernie Sanders doing? He is going on an anti-oligarchy tour. He went to Wisconsin, he went to Iowa, he's going to all of these like Midwestern states, which are also the first states that get to vote in primaries and states that matter when it comes to like the Electoral College. And he's talking to them about why oligarchy is bad. Now, oligarchy being a bad thing should be quite obvious. But unfortunately, it is not, because a lot of Democrats rely on wealthy people to donate to their campaigns, because without money, they would not be in office. Like, I think people underestimate the role that money plays. Rick Scott, I'm from Florida. Rick Scott is the governor of Florida. I literally had his campaign manager come to my class and talk to me about how Rick Scott won, and he said the only reason Rick Scott was able to win the election, he wasn't because of all of his healthcare fraud. The only reason he was able to win the election was because he had enough money to keep going. He had like an extra $1 million to let him stay in the race and keep going. If they weren't able to continue campaigning for like one more month, he would have lost. Okay? So money is incredibly important, and you can't get that amount of money from the regular voter. And so Kamala Harris, for example, raised, I think, over $1 billion for her campaign, and she raised millions in grassroots fundraising, meaning small dollar donations, but then she also raised a bunch of money from billionaires. Now you have like all these people giving a little bit of money, but then you have these few people giving a lot of money. So who do you feel like you are going to be beholden to whenever you get into office? Obviously the few people who gave you a lot of money, because you can also guarantee and rely on those people to consistently be giving you money over time. Now, the only way to solve this issue is to get rid of money in politics altogether. In my opinion, let's have government-funded elections, whatever. They're not going to do that. So what Democrats should be doing is saying, okay, we're going to get rid of all of our billionaire and corporate donors, because that means those are the people that we're going to have to listen to. If they did this, they would raise so much money from like the average person. I mean, if we just look at Bernie's 2 campaigns, he was able to raise millions from like small dollar donations. I think the average donation was maybe like around $30 per person. But Democrats aren't doing this. In fact, in the words of James Carville, who is a Democratic strategist, he said Democrats should just roll over and lay dead. let the Trump administration just do whatever the heck it's doing and let Republicans, I don't know, fall in on themselves. Voters will see it and then they'll vote for you Democrats during the next election cycle. Except I completely disagree, because if Democrats aren't doing anything now to make Americans' lives better, why would they even vote in the next election? One of the issues with Kamala's campaign, or like with the last election cycle, is that a lot of people who showed up for Joe Biden didn't show up to vote at all. It's not even like they switched their vote, they just didn't vote. We had a huge population of people not voting at all. And I'm sure if they had voted, they probably would have voted for Kamala Harris or for a Democrat, probably someone like Bernie Sanders. But Kamala's campaign ended up being so uninspiring. And I don't know how to get it through, like, Democrats' brains that, like, we don't need to be working with Republicans because, for one, they don't work with us, and two, Republicans are actively making people's lives terrible, like cutting SNAP food programs, getting rid of Medicaid, getting rid of Social Security, all for what? So that Jeff Bezos can have an extra $1 billion in his bank account? Do you think he needs more money? Do you think Elon Musk, the world's first trillionaire, needs more money in his bank account? No, but people need food. People need housing. They need these things to survive, and they need someone who's going to fight for them. And right now, no Democrats are fighting. You know, Hakeem Jeffries, a minority leader in Congress, literally went to Silicon Valley just to make sure that his standing was good with all of his billionaire donors, because so many people were coming out speaking against oligarchy. And then Trump gave his State of the Union address, and Democrats really did nothing to, like, protest it. They all, like, showed up, they held signs. The only person who was able to protest it, or, like, who did anything about it, was Representative Al Green, who screamed during it and said, you can't take away our health care. Like, you can't take away our health care. And then he was escorted out. And then a bunch of Republicans, and I believe 10 or 20 Democrats, voted to censure him from Congress because of decorum. Even though Trump is threatening to take away people's health care, they said, no. There's decorum in this room. You need to listen to us. If you are not fighting for anything, if you stand for nothing, if it's very blatantly obvious that you only care about your corporate donors, do you think that voters are actually going to vote for you? People are going to come out to the polls and actually show up for you? Honestly, the answer is no, and Democrats need a leader. We need someone who's going to say, hey, it's actually really messed up that we have all this big moneyed interest and that the economy is tanking at the behest of a South African trillionaire. What are you going to do for us? How are you going to make life better for us? Eggs are still really expensive. I don't care about decorum. I care about feeding my family. But again, Democrats are so out of touch and also do not care. They're essentially the same as Republicans. And I think that's why we're not hearing from a lot of them, because these economic policies are also benefiting them as well. They, like, want the stock market to crash so that they can short it, buy a bunch of stuff, and then when the economy goes back up, they'll just make a bunch of money. Like, this is all part of the plan. But this is hurting our lives, because let's say you're trying to retire and you have a 401k. Well, now you can't retire because the economy is bad and there's no money in your 401k. Anyway, lastly, all I'm going to say is, if we believe that Trump is this Nazi fascist that we keep saying he is, we need to fight him like he is one. But right now, Democrats are just bowing down and bending their knee to Republicans and not doing anything about it. We need to have stronger fighters. We need people coming out, educating the American people about what's actually going on in Congress, what Trump's aims are, what the Republicans' aims are, and how this is ruining our country. I mean, we have, got rid of freaking air traffic controllers, so now planes are crashing. Again, got rid of SNAP benefits for people, so now they can't feed their children. They're dissolving the Department of Education, which means that our student loan payments actually are going up. We have a foreign entity ruling our country and telling us what to do with our money just so he can have more, so it can just sit there and do freaking nothing. Oh yeah, they're getting rid of regulations for the environment, so the air we breathe and the water that we drink. They literally said it's okay to pour, I believe, more sewage into water now. So we're drinking dirty water. Is this the America you want? Is this what you wanted? I do not believe so. But you know what? Democrats, Republicans at this point are two sides of the same coin, and we need a leader, we need a fighter. Right now, the only person who's actually really doing anything is Bernie Sanders, in my opinion. Obviously, there are people like AOC, Al Green, Maxwell Frost, who are doing things to protest, but we just need a stronger, more unified Democratic Party, and they need to be doing everything they can to stop Republicans and the Trump administration from enacting everything that they want to, because it's literally going to come at the cost of our lives and our well-being. And yeah, that's my video. If there's anything I left out, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'd be happy to respond. I hope you really liked this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if there's anything else that you want me to talk about, please let me know. And yeah, I look forward to the next one. Bye!
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.